Good evening, I'm Diana Sky, and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. U.S. President Donald Trump responds to Moscow's provocations by deploying 2 nuclear submarines closer to Russian borders. Now, we'll have more on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. A massive military deal. Poland is on its way to becoming a tank power. And 18 killed in Gaza as aid line turns deadly. And Polish surgeons are breaking new ground with the remote cardiac procedure. The United States has deployed its nuclear submarines, quote, closer to Russia because of an online argument between President Donald Trump and Russia's former president, Dmitry Medvedev. As Trump's August 8th deadline for Russia to make progress on ending the war draws near, the American administration is showing increasing signs of frustration with the Kremlin. Ovidiusz Nicea has more.
Donald Trump has repeatedly demonstrated that he does not tolerate dissent. Most recently, the thorn in his side has been Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council and former Russian president. Following a heated social media exchange and a post from Medvedev threatening the use of Russia's nuclear capabilities, Trump ordered the deployment of 2 U.S. nuclear submarines to what he called appropriate regions.
I do that on the basis of safety for our people. A threat was made by a former president of Russia, and we're going to protect our people.
There has been no further clarification from American military officials, as both the U.S. Navy and the Pentagon declined to comment on Trump's remarks.
It is difficult to track those submarines and if at all they are moving and where they're going to, so we don't actually know what the real outcome of that's going to be, or if that is just posturing or just a new type of rhetoric.
Donald Trump has come a long way since the early days of his presidency, when he praised Russia and openly scolded the Ukrainian president, including in the Oval Office.
Disrespectful to the country, this country.
But as the talks with Russia kept going in circles, Trump's frustration was visibly growing. And reportedly, the US, together with NATO and Ukraine, is developing a new mechanism to supply Kyiv with vital military aid. Under the new scheme, Ukraine would provide a list of its most needed weapons to NATO countries, who would then negotiate among themselves who would donate or pay for them.
I think it does highlight a good trend, a trend that I think the Trump administration is increasingly realizing that Russia is not sincere, it doesn't have any real intentions to negotiate, nor does it want to stop its ongoing war in Ukraine.
Russia's attacks on Ukraine continue. At least 3 civilians across the country were killed and dozens wounded over the past day alone.
Ceasefire proposals have been on the table for a long time. Ukrainian proposals, American proposals, and many others globally have raised this with Russia. Each time, the only response is an attempt to buy more time for war, more time for terror.
Peace deal must be done.
On Friday, the UN Security Council debated Russia's intensified attacks on Ukraine. Ukraine claims to have targeted Russian refineries, a military airfield and factory in drone strikes deep into Russian territory. Reporting for TVP World, Ovidiusz Nicea.
Poland has just sealed 2 major defense deals in as many days, but the one signed on Friday stands out. After more than a decade-long pause, the Polish arms industry is returning to full-scale tank production. Alexandra Bulenda reports.
Tanks like these will soon proudly bear the label Made in Poland. On Friday, Warsaw signed an executive contract for 180 K2 Black Panther tanks from South Korea. But with a crucial twist, production will partially move to Gliwice, a city in southern Poland.
This agreement gives Poland the capability to produce tanks. Of the 180 tanks in Friday's contract, 64 will already be in a Polish adapted version with domestic components, because the Polish Armaments Group will be involved in their production.
By next year, the first tanks from this joint production line will roll onto Polish soil, the so-called Polonization of the K2. Adapting the tank to the Polish army requirements with local industry participation has faced early challenges. Those now seem to have been overcome.
From the perspective of the defense industry, this was a long-awaited deal, and we've secured a package of equipment to be made here in Poland. It's not full production from A to Z, but either way, more than 100 vehicles of different kinds will roll off the line with a Made in Poland label.
And the shopping spree doesn't end there. On Thursday, the Defense Ministry inked an annex for 25 US M1150 ABV engineer tanks, armored mine clearing and fortification breaching vehicles based on the M1 Abrams chassis. Poland's armor tally is growing fast. Under the Wilk program, Warsaw aims for around 1,000 K2 tanks. So far, 110 of the 180 initially ordered have been delivered, with the rest expected by year-end. The newly signed second batch, another 180, will include significant local assembly. On top of that, Poland has received 116 refurbished M1A1 Abrams and awaits 250 newly built M1A2 tanks by 2026. The artillery branch is swelling too, with 218 K9 howitzers arriving in phases through 2026. For the first time in years, Poland's defense industry isn't just buying, it's building. For TVP World, I'm Alexandra Bulenda.
As the famine in Gaza spirals, Israel continues to deny allegations of deliberate starvation. A U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff visited the Strip to assess the humanitarian situation on the ground, but his stop at an Israeli-run aid site has drawn sharp condemnation from Hamas, who vow not to disarm until a Palestinian state is created, all while releasing a new hostage video. Natalia Komarov has the latest on the humanitarian crisis.
As the images from Gaza grow increasingly disturbing by the day, Western governments have been facing pressure to ease the famine. U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff visited Israel in a bid to ensure a steady flow of aid, which could prevent mass starvation among the Palestinian civilian population.
The purpose of the visit was to give at POTUS a clear understanding of the humanitarian situation and help craft a plan to deliver food and medical aid to the people of Gaza.
President Trump summed up the visit with his trademark optimism.
I spoke to Steve Witkoff. He had a great meeting with a lot of people, and the primary meeting was on food. And he also had some other conversations that I'll tell you about later, but he had a meeting on getting the people fed, and that's what we want.
For weeks on end, reports have been emerging of Israeli forces targeting hungry crowds at aid distribution centers, killing or wounding dozens of Palestinians each time. One such incident took place on Saturday during Witkoff's visit, resulting in 18 people killed and 36 wounded.
Basically, it seems like Witkoff has been delivered only the knowledge, the situation from the point of view of Israel and Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is that there is no famine in Gaza, there is no starvation.
But the pictures speak for themselves. Multiple institutions of the United Nations have been raising the alarm, as 1 in 3 people in Gaza are now going days without food.
We are at a crossroad, and the choices made now will determine whether tens of thousands of children live or die.
Multiple countries have intensified airdropping the aid directly over the Gaza Strip, including France and Spain, which have been pushing for the recognition of the Palestinian state and an end to the devastating war.
All the cards are in the hands of Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump in this war. Maybe in the hands of Hamas, but any of these 3 actors would not give up its aims and commitments.
The Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski has voiced scathing criticism of the Israeli strategy in Gaza.
The children starving in Gaza have no idea what Hamas is. Nobody has the right to cause children to die from hunger.
During his visit, Steve Witkoff was also expected to salvage the talks on Gaza ceasefire. However, Hamas announced they would not put down arms until an internationally recognized Palestinian state is created with its capital in Jerusalem.
Real changes for Palestinian people will only happen when, let's say, the deeper problems between Israel and Palestine are solved.
Whether Witkoff's visit to Israel can influence the desperate situation in the Gaza Strip remains to be seen. But with a growing number of Western governments willing to recognize Palestinian independence, there is a glimmer of hope on the horizon. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
In Serbia, grief has turned into outrage. 9 months after a deadly train station roof collapse that killed 16 people in Novi Sad, protesters are still vying for answers. Anger is growing over missing documents, police brutality, and what many are calling a government cover-up. Now, with calls for snap elections on the rise, Agata Dura reports on a movement that is showing no signs of slowing down.
9 months, 16 victims, and 16 minutes of silence for those who lost their lives. Yet another wave of protests swept through Serbia this weekend.
The protests have begun at the end of November last year because of the collapse of the railway station in Novi Sad.
On November 1st last year, the canopy of the train station in Serbia's second largest city collapsed, killing 16. The tragedy led to a surge of protests. Dozens of thousands took to the streets. Hundreds were detained.
Especially after the 28th of June, something of police brutality in different ways became more popular, I would say. You had a lot of police on that protest, a lot of people arrested, a lot of protesters beaten hardly, and that later on finished in hospital.
The demonstrators demand for the government to publish the full documentation regarding the renovation of the ill-fated Novi Sad station rooftop, which took place between 2021 and mid-2024.
The key documentation that is missing is not yet published, and for what we know now is basically we believe that it doesn't even exist.
The protesters, mostly students, also demand snap elections.
Really sad event that took place in Novi Sad on the 1st November 2024 did not come with a proper reaction from the government or from any of the government officials.
The incident in Novi Sad that happened in train stations is just a tip of the iceberg of what's going on in Serbia and throughout Serbia, because of an autocratic regime that tries to control media and society, NGOs in Serbia, which is halting true democratic development in the country.
Serbia has been classified as a transitional or hybrid regime by an American NGO, Freedom House. This type of political system often emerges in countries transitioning from authoritarian rule to democracy, or the other way round. For TVP World, I'm Agata Dura.
Polish doctors have just made history. For the first time in Poland, surgeons successfully performed a robotic cardiac surgery remotely with the patient and surgeon hundreds of kilometers apart. Our reporter Anastasia Yanchenko takes a closer look at this groundbreaking achievement and what it could mean for the future of medicine.
This is a breakthrough moment for the medical field in Poland. For the first time, not just in Poland, but also in Europe, surgeons successfully performed remote robotic hospital-to-hospital surgeries. The operations were carried out between two Polish cities over 300 kilometers apart.
We have performed a radical prostatectomy using the robotic system. So we have removed the prostate because of the cancer. And what is very unique, that the surgeon is in a hospital in Gdańsk and the patient is in a hospital in Warsaw.
Using a console system, the surgeons remotely performed two separate operations, a cardiac and a urologic procedure, while the robot operated directly on the patients. The console, equipped with special manipulators, allows the surgeon to control the robot's arms, which are physically with the patient in Warsaw. The two parts of the robot are connected via the internet, while the Polish police ensure a stable and secure connection between both cities.
The movements that I make on the console, they transfer on the robot and on the patient in another place. So this is something very unique, but it opens a new era in robotic surgery.
The use of surgical robots is growing worldwide. They help doctors perform complex procedures and are especially important now when Europe faces a shortage of medical specialists. According to Poland's health ministry, by 2028, the country may lack nearly 800 surgeons. Their numbers have already fallen by 15% as fewer young doctors choose this career. Professor and cardiac surgeon Piotr Suwalski, who performed a first remote bypass operation in Europe, a procedure that restores blood flow to the heart by rerouting blocked arteries, says robotic surgery offers many advantages beyond the ability to operate remotely.
Robotic surgery in general has lots of advantages because, of course, it's much less invasive than standard surgery. Of course, it depends on the type of surgery, but as a general, it offers much less invasiveness to the patients.
In times of war, remote surgical systems could help save surgeons' lives. The war in Ukraine has already cost the lives of hundreds of doctors during frontline medical operations. According to the World Health Organization and Ukrainian authorities, at least 128 healthcare workers have been killed and 288 injured in verified attacks since February 2022. With the development of remote operations, doctors could operate safely from a distance instead of risking their lives on the front lines. In the future, this technology might even enable surgeries in space or other hard-to-reach areas.
It can be hospital, but also it can be, hopefully not, like battlefield or some position very close to a battlefield, or even the space for the astronauts, for example.
Polish surgeons believe this is the beginning of a new era. Remote hospital-to-hospital robotic surgeries are expected to become a common medical practice in the near future. For TVP World, Anastasia Yanchenko.
Rock music, good fun, meetings with interesting and inspiring people in the tent of the Academy of Fine Arts. And on top of that, love, friendship, and brotherhood, all attributes of one of the most beautiful festivals in the world. The Poland Rock Festival is underway, and our correspondent Karolina Szaplan is on site.
Here in northwestern part of Poland, a disused military airfield becomes a mecca for music lovers. Welcome to Poland Rock, Europe's largest free festival. Behind me, a metal band, Static X, is tearing up the stage. And I had the chance to speak to their bassist, Tony Campos, a bit earlier.
We're very excited to play our first festival in Poland. And it just so happens to be the biggest free festival in Europe. So, yeah, that's pretty awesome.
But this is more than a music festival. It's a tribute to the over 100,000 of volunteers behind the Great Orchestra of Christmas Charity, Poland's biggest grassroots fundraising movement. So, how does this year's Poland Rock feel for those who are here?
It's so amazing. I love beautiful all of it. Sorry for my voice. As you can hear, my voice is pretty cracked because of all of the screaming out there in the mosh pits and with people that I love. And yeah, it's so fucking amazing.
My favorite band is Static X. I am first time, so I am thinking this is very good opportunity to be here. It is very good that I can meet my colleagues from the work, also my wife, colleagues. My brother-in-law, so yeah, it's really good.
Well, and if you were wondering what to wear to this festival, tradition dictates to sport an old t-shirt from Old Edition as a badge of honor. As the dust hangs thick over the mosh pit and the music soars into the night, this year's edition of Poland's Rock seals its self-styled moniker, the most beautiful festival in the world. Well, at least for me. For TVP World, I'm Karolina Szaplan.
The recent deadly strike on Kyiv, which claimed the lives of more than 30 people, marks a disturbing escalation in Russian aggression. Now, in a sharp response, President Donald Trump condemned the attack, calling it disgusting. and for the first time since tensions intensified, issued an ultimatum. Russia must sign a ceasefire process by August 8, warning that if diplomacy fails yet again, Washington will roll out new sanctions against Moscow. Now, to delve deeper into the topic, I'm joined by Garvin Walsh, CEO at Article 7 Intelligence for Democrats. Thank you so much for being with us here on TVP World this evening.
Thank you and good evening.
So, Galvin, the United States now has deployed its nuclear submarines closer to Russia because of this online argument that he had with former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. Now, I want to ask you, is this suggesting to us that Trump is actually, he isn't playing games and he's actually taking the Russian threat seriously, on Washington seriously? I mean, also, August 8th is just really days away. What kind of scenario are we looking at?
Well, first of all, the nuclear submarine thing is a bit of a game. It's just sending these submarines to a slightly different location, but they have very, very long-range missiles on them. It doesn't really matter where they are located in the world. I guess it's playing Medvedev, who frequently sounds off on his Twitter account at his own game. It's not really a significant issue. The August 8th deadline is more of a significant issue because we're seeing Trump getting more and more exasperated with his inability to bring Vladimir Putin to the table. He thought he could get a deal with him. He thought he could manage to persuade Putin to give up, make some kind of concessions and give up his war. But it's quite clear that Putin is pretty convinced that he's doing well. His troops are advancing. Yes, they're taking heavy casualties, but in Putin's view, this war is going well, and he thinks he's got the upper hand. He's got no reason to make peace right now unless the United States starts committing significant more military aid to Ukraine. He'll continue to have no reason to make peace.
Now, so let me ask you this. I mean, if August 8th, let's say, passes without actually any movement, what are the risks of a deeper U.S.-Russia rift, standoff? Are we looking at a new phase of the war?
You may say it's a risk. I would say it's an opportunity or a restoration of what really the way that things ought to be. Trump has tried to have a more pro-Russian policy, but we're now seeing that doesn't work. Hopefully he'll be able to adjust, and means that the United States will revert to its traditional policy of trying to support the West. Even if Trump is not going to support the transatlantic alliance, it's quite clear. Even with the trade deal with the European Union that was negotiated last week, he's not a friend of Europe, but he may be sufficiently annoyed by Russia that he has to adopt a more sensible and pragmatic policy, even if a little bit by accident.
Let me ask you this. How do you think that Europe is responding, and from the European perspective, to Trump's renewed focus on Ukraine and saying that, you know, he's giving Putin this deadline? How is it being viewed?
I think Europe needs to not take this that seriously. Trump is not a man of his word. He likes spectacle. He likes to pretend that he can hold people to deals, but in practice he doesn't really manage to pull that off. He tends to get so obsessed with the optics of a deal that he overlooks the substance. Europe would be wise to continue building up its military, continue trying to support Ukraine as much as it can. In fact, nearly all American aid has now been replaced by European aid. The United States is supplying a few key components, but almost everything is European now. We've stepped into the breach, and we need to continue to do that. We need to build up our defense industries. We need to build up our production capacity, and that's what will give us leverage with both Russia and the United States.
Or you did say something there. You said that, you know, Trump is just probably more talk than he is of action. But I mean, at this time, and you also did mention that he is fed up. But wouldn't he, you know, he said he's going to impose more sanctions on Russia. Is this something that you're saying he possibly now won't do?
He might do it, but even if he doesn't, it doesn't make that much of a difference. The important thing is that he doesn't lift the existing sanctions on Russia. And then, you know, U.S.-Russian trade is pretty small. The real problem is that Russia is managing to evade a lot of the sanctions by selling oil, by selling up even to European countries, by importing equipment that's been laundered through countries that border Russia. There's no real reason to think that the demand for cars in Tajikistan has exploded in the last 2 or 3 years. What's really going on is things are being filtered into Russia by the back door. We know that Russia is now getting increasing support from China, from North Korea, It needs that support to continue its military operations because its supplies are getting very heavily hit by the war effort and by the destruction that Ukraine is managing to wreak upon Russia. If Russia attacks Ukrainian civilians, Ukraine has understood that it makes much more sense to try and attack Russian infrastructure. There were attacks this morning on Russian oil refineries, very spectacular explosions as well. And this is interfering with Russia's ability to get fuel and equipment to the front. And this affects their performance, and it should hopefully make Russia take heavier casualties because they can't supply their men, they can't provide the right kind of equipment, and they can't then mount the kind of attack that they would need to do to take more territory back.
Garvin, let me shift gears here for a moment. I want to talk about the latest anti-corruption bill in Ukraine and that entire scenario that unfolded with Zelensky. Now, we've seen initially all of Zelensky's MPs, vote unanimously with him. Then, on whether it's to change the law or vice versa. But now, what is that move actually showing us about the state of democracy in Ukraine? And do you think that Zelensky damaged his reputation with all of this?
I mean, it's one of these things that, Ukrainians are worried about the war, but they think that corruption is almost as serious a problem as the war. They were very dismayed by what happened, and they got onto the streets and they protested, and Zelensky backed down. I mean, Ukraine is a country that is very decentralized, very sensitive about corruption. It has a history of removing corrupt presidents at the ballot box or, if necessary, in revolutions. I'm not sure why Ukraine thought this was a good idea, or Zelensky thought this was a good idea, because it clearly wasn't. Particularly when it's his major financial backer in the European Union wouldn't tolerate this. It's possible there may have been some change in the American position that might have, caused a different calculation. The Biden administration wouldn't have tolerated this either. So I think he has been chastened by this and has realized that while he is the war leader and people respect that in Ukraine, they want to see a Ukraine that is a democracy, that has the rule of law, that fights against corruption and ensures that the resources that are being pumped into Ukraine are going to fight Russia and fight Ukraine's enemies, not to line the pockets of people who happen to be in power at the moment.
But I mean, how can Ukraine reassure its international partners, for instance, that it wouldn't repeat such a move? How can Europe be certain?
Well, by not repeating it, it's very clear that this backfired. They shouldn't try and do the same thing again. They need to understand that Ukrainian society won't tolerate this kind of attacks on independent institutions, and instead they should continue to reinforce them and realize that their success is going to come with getting closer and closer to the European Union. That means they're going to have to continue to take strong measures against corruption, take strong measures to implement aspects of the single market and other parts of EU law. And if they do that, their economy will grow stronger, even under wartime conditions. And this is the kind of thing that Ukrainians want to see.
Let me ask you this. Germany pledged 2 Patriot missile systems to Ukraine. Do you think it's going to change anything for Russia?
At the moment, Patriot missiles are one of the few systems that we have in quantity that are able to defend against Russian ballistic missiles. There are European systems that can do the same thing as well, but they so far can't be manufactured in large numbers. So it's important. Russia has upgraded its systems. It's launched these devastating attacks on civilian infrastructure in Ukraine, and they need air defense to be able to protect their population. They certainly are protecting their population as a military strategy. This is probably a mistake by Russia. It's also a reflection of its weak technology. It's unable to attack military installations with precision, so it resorts to terror tactics against the civilian population. And Ukraine needs to be able to continue to defend its cities against this barbaric and indiscriminate attack. It's important that we keep supplying these kind of weapons to Ukraine and ensure that it has the wherewithal and the ammunition as well as the missile systems to be able to defend itself, against the Shahed drones, and also to be able to preserve what it can of the livelihood and the economy of its country. Because this is how the war is going to be won, by Ukraine continuing to be able to sustain its population, by Ukraine continuing to be able to sustain an economic development, to sustain its military industry, and with Russia being unable to do so and finding more and more difficulties to supply its military machine.
Thank you so much, Garvin Walsh, CEO, Article 7 Intelligence for Democrats, for being with us here on World News Tonight.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
And that's all for this edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching and stay with us for more news and features.